You want more than just the headlines? Find out what's going on and what it means with me, Dennis Prager, this morning at 11, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, so celebratory atmosphere among House Republicans yesterday after they moved their tax reform bill out of the chamber. And Paul Ryan explaining what they accomplished.
Of course, I want to thank not just the members who made this possible today. I want to thank the president. I want to thank his administration. And I want to thank our partners in the Senate who are doing their work as well. From the very start, we said that failure is not an option, and the president and his team have worked so constructively every step of the way with us. He's been a tremendous partner on this issue, and you know, I just got to say how proud I am of this conference. Tax reform is so very hard, but we know that there are people who are really struggling in this country. We know that we are just coming through a decade of real economic anxiety, and we know that this is a nation that has so much more potential that has not yet been tapped. That's what this day is about.
So, Paul Ryan, hat tip to President Trump as a partner moving this along. But the problem is it's may run into significant interference when it's picked up by the Senate after Thanksgiving. Ron Johnson on CNBC explaining his opposition at present, the first Republican senator to voice opposition to what the House had planned to move and did move yesterday.
We need to make sure that every American company remains competitive, and we can't leave the pass-through businesses behind, which is why they came up with a 25% pass-through rate. The problem is neither the House nor the Senate version honored that 25% rate. It's far higher, and we are leaving those pass-through businesses behind. And those pass-through businesses really are the engine of economic growth, job creation, innovation in our economy. And so I'm just looking for a fair shake for all businesses to maintain the competitive balance and position of all businesses. Let's not upset that apple cart and harm our economy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not opposed to what Ron Johnson's saying. I appreciate the perspective. I don't know if I would die on that hill if that's what it comes to, but that's where Ron Johnson's at, and he's hoping for a better outcome in that specific provision. And you did see a little bit of a willingness to fight the battle here between one of the old men of the Senate, Orrin Hatch, got into it.
During the Senate Finance Committee, he wasn't taking it from Senator Brown.
I get kind of sick and tired of it. True, it's a nice political play.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
it's not true.
With all due respect, I get sick and tired of the richest people
Regular order,
in the country
Mr. Chairman.
getting richer and
Regular order.
richer. We do a tax.
Regular order.
Well, get a hurrah from that guy.
Regular order.
And over again. How many times do we do this before we learn this?
Is he hitting him with that?
Listen, I've honored you by allowing you to spout off here. And what you said was not right. That's all I'm saying. I come from the lower middle class originally. We didn't have anything. So don't spew that stuff on me. I get a little tired of that crap. And let me just say something. If we worked together, we could pull this country out of every mess it's in.
That was fun.
Wasn't it a great exchange?
I like to see that Dink, Sherrod Brown, and Orrin Hatch in the octagon.
Oh, yeah.
Wall Street Journal saying, two tax reforms can be better than one. That there's a lot more that is similar in what the House passed and what the Senate is proposing than is different. This shouldn't be an intractable impasse, is really what the Journal argues. Well, let's get a perspective of somebody that was intimately involved and has been intimately involved in this from beginning to present. He is Peter Roskam, of course, congressman from Illinois 6th, then the Western Burbs, but also member of the House Ways and Means Committee. He's got a little FaceTime.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we've been there on the dais with Paul Ryan and
congratulations,
Kevin Brady. It's a big shot. Peter Roskam, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on this morning. Thank
you. Big celebration in the House yesterday, but is it going to be short-lived based on some of the resistance we're hearing from a handful of Republicans in the Senate?
I don't think so. So, I mean, nobody was spiking the football yesterday, but it was this feeling of good progress. We got something out of the House that hasn't gotten out of the House in 30 years. So just to take a step back and reflect and say, okay, good first step. But to your point, there's several steps to do. Here's a couple things to keep an eye on. One is the parameters of the House bill and the parameters of the Senate bill are similar. In other words, they're tracking with one another. There's differences, obviously. There's similarities, obviously. But it's not as if there's an entirely different tax structure that the Senate is contemplating. And so what that tells you is that these are things that can and will be negotiated when the Senate, after the Senate does their bill. So what you'll notice is most House members are restraining from commenting on what the Senate is doing, and the thinking is let them do their bill and let them get them up and out of the Senate. They don't need a lot of critique from us right now. Similarly, most of them were pretty disciplined, and they were not commenting on what the House is doing. And so I think we learned a very hard lesson in healthcare on what not to do and how not to do it, and are determined not to repeat that mistake.
Well, why is this House bill still a hard sell for the middle class?
It's not. So here's the interesting thing, Amy. All during the debate, during the markup, the 4 days when the Ways and Means Committee was going through it line by line by line, the Democrats offered nothing other than amendments to maintain the status quo. So in other words, it was hyperbole and overcharacterization and hype and basically these bumper sticker arguments. But when you look at this and you look at these numbers underneath, they're desperately worried that this is actually going to come to pass because the middle income tax relief here is incredibly significant. The guy who chairs he's in charge of the Joint Committee on Taxation, the executive director of it, issued a statement, and during the testimony said, look, 70% of the individual tax relief in this bill goes to households under $200,000. So this is one of these situations, the more people look at it, the better it looks. This is not one of these bills where people say, oh, this is actually worse than I thought. This is actually better than people think.
Ron Johnson wants a lower rate for pass-through, but it seems like the most pass-through businesses and pass-through income, it seems like the most significant difference, though, is the proposal to repeal the individual mandate, the Obamacare individual mandate. Either one of those items poison pills in terms of reconciling competing tax reform bills between the House and the Senate?
No, I don't think so. So, I mean, quickly on the pass-throughs, there's a difference between what are known as C corporations and S corporations. And C corporations have a double tax because if you take your money out as dividends, you're paying taxes again. Right. So that's why the C corporation corporate rate is lower. The pass-through rate is at 25, which is a historic low, by the way. And the National Federation of Independent Business, the small businesses, are wholeheartedly behind this, and they're saying this is great for us because the first $75,000 that they earn, the first $75,000 is taxed at a single-digit rate, 9%. You haven't seen a 9% rate since World War II. So I think the C versus S issue is going to be all dealt with. Okay, so your question on the individual mandate goes to this. We've done the individual mandate. We passed repeal of Obamacare out of the House. And so what we wanted to do is say, all right, we're going to put this together, and we're going to assume that the Senate can't do that. If, however, the Senate can do that, I think it's great stuff. And we would, I think, welcome that. I think that would be an easy thing to include in the House. But the Senate has been the obstacle in the past on things as it relates to Obamacare. And our view is demonstrate that you've got the capacity to do it, and then we would, in all likelihood, join with that.
Oh, well, just on the S-Corp issue, though, the rate for S-Corps, then is Ron Johnson being unreasonable when it comes to trying to drive a lower rate for S-Corps?
Well, so the discussion about what the House bill did was it moved the C-Corp rate and the S-Corp rate down by the same proportion. So remember, S-Corps are paying as individuals. So S-Corps are getting a tax break on the compensation side because for the first time we split out compensation income within an S-Corp with business income within an S-Corp. So when the individual rates come down, S-Corps benefit. When the business income rate drops to 25% for the first time in who knows how long, that's a benefit. So I'm interested in right now the forum for his comments and his critique will be the Senate finance bill, and that has to be dealt with through the Senate process. We'll deal with any reasonable criticisms. But look, the entire spectrum of the conservative movement here is behind this bill, and which is very different than what you saw coming out with health care. So if there's something that we haven't seen that Senator Johnson is able to bring to our attention that we can improve, great. But a lot of folks have really wrestled greatly with this. And so I think that the time is for him now to focus in with his Senate colleagues.
It's been a good month for you. You've got this moved along, and you got a new IRS commissioner. Congratulations.
Hey, I'm not tired of winning yet, just for the record.
Oh,
well,
winning.
Yeah, I'm glad. That's good to know. I don't think we are either. With respect to that commission, though, finally getting Koskinen out, long overdue. Is that a person that you're comfortable with? That we won't see the abuses that we saw under Koskinen?
You know, I think that I think in all likelihood, I don't know him. All I know is, you know, it's likely a significant improvement, and you know, here. The best thing that we can do, that Congress can do in the short run, is make the tax code simpler and give the IRS less capacity to manipulate complexity against ordinary citizens.
One other issue, just a totally unrelated topic, but this is just concerning. The stories out in the wake of that Sutherland Springs massacre, the stories out about just how significant is the armed forces' failure to report dishonorable discharges resulting from convictions in military tribunals, court-martial proceedings. Mark Milley, the Army Chief of Staff, suggested that it's a significant problem that the failure rate in the Army could be in the neighborhood of 10 to 20% to report these convictions to the national databases, so that somebody like the shooter in Sutherland Springs can't walk in and obtain weapons, for example.
If that's true, that's a devastating fact, and it's got to be dealt with quickly. The underlying assumption of all of these systems is that people who are not entitled under the law to get firearms can't get them. And if there's a breach in something as straightforward as a reporting requirement, you'll see a lot of attention moving forward on that.
All right. He is Congressman Peter Roskam, Republican rep from the 6th, the Western Burbs. Peter, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
You too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot